This is a picture of me, my partner, who's actually here tonight, and my little brother. We might look quite tired, I'm not sure. We've just spent several days digging our home out of, my family's home out of liquefaction in December when it was ruined. So this is kind of a context to why I started this earthquake. My family and I have been very affected by these earthquakes. So in my research, I wanted to look at why community is important during disasters and what they contribute to resilience. And I also wanted to look at the role of place identity in shaping this. And so just to focus on the first topic today, resilience in communities, I wanted to look at resilience because it's defined as the ability to survive, adapt, function, and also adapt to a crisis. So it started as a biological science, just a bit of background, and but it's moved into more social issues. So kind of looking at it from a multi-pronged approach. So as has been mentioned tonight, Christchurch is an obvious example in many people's minds when they think about disasters. So the effect that communities had during the Christchurch earthquake was that they were often left to their own devices at least in the first week when there was intense search and rescue effort. But luckily the landscape of Christchurch meant that rail connections meant that they could get food and water supplies. So what can we expect in Wellington? Well, a recent report just said that we would have potentially no gas for 3 months, no phone for 10 days, no power for 3 weeks to 2 months. And the search and rescue effort may take longer here than in Christchurch. So how are we going to cope? Well, my case study looked at Project Lyttelton, which is remarkably similar to Wellington, as you can see from the photo. It's a port town, it's isolated from Christchurch by the hills, and its key roads were damaged during the earthquakes. But because of their organisations, in particular Project Lyttelton, they managed to pull together and were the focus of much media attention. So as I mentioned, the Volunteer Fire Brigade, St John's Ambulance and the Navy, who were involved at the time luckily, all pulled together alongside Project Lyttelton and the Time Bank. So Project Lyttelton is a grassroots group that runs community activities, a community garden and also the Time Bank. So what is a Time Bank? Well, a Time Bank trades credits, which people earn and use in exchange for services. This equalises the worth of services and also provides a way of valuing things that cannot be or aren't often valued in the monetary system. In the earthquake, this was used to repair homes, man the silver fence build, check on the elderly and childcare. So one of the things that this did was it increased social support, and I love this picture. It looks like our little kid at home. So this nurtured the informal networks of who knew each other in their street, the neighbours, so on, and that provided a lot of the actual assistance during the earthquake immediately. It also contributed to volunteering, so we call this social participation. The Time Bank was able to quickly and efficiently mobilise people. So while the civil defence in Christchurch was turning people away from their doors, the Time Bank was using them as civilian volunteers to, as I mentioned before, do all those things, contact the elderly and repair people's homes. In terms of adapting to new crises or things in the future, Project Lyttelton has helped by increasing social learning from the event. So one example of this is that they started a food co-op because the supermarket left the town due to the damaged buildings, leaving them with no source of food in the town. Connected to this is social memory. So this is really important because it helps people remember and generations in the future remember what has happened in the past. This is an example of a Little Stitches project where people got together on the street and sewed hearts to sew on fences. And these sort of things will be remembered for future generations. So through all these projects, Project Lyttelton nurtured a sense of diversity. And this created a rich background of opinion and experiences for them to draw on, which ultimately meant that there was more ideas and experiences in responding to the quake. So this is ultimately a good thing. So what can we learn from Project Lyttelton and their experiences? Well, one thing in particular that emerged from my research is that in the September earthquake there was confusion over the role of the Time Bank, and this initially led to some conflict. People said, where is the Time Bank? Why isn't it involved? Why haven't you thought about it? But this was eventually resolved, and so for the February and June earthquakes, some of the really bad ones, it was up and running and fully integrated with the civil defence. So from this experience, we can see how important it is to link organisations, not only together, as was already done before the earthquakes, with high levels of governance, such as the civil defence. So with all of this information, what can we do? Well, personally, we need to realise that we may be without for a lot longer than 72 hours. And we need to start building our networks and our social connections now. Collectively, we need to trial emergency procedures for community groups before the event happens. We need to link community organisations, and we need to officially integrate community organisations with higher levels of governance. And we could also do with quite a bit of support financially and for resources for these community groups and the important work they do. I'd like to suggest that community groups that have the capacity think about developing an emergency plan. This could be based on the principles of permaculture, the observation and adapting, and the action learning cycle. So I've displayed this here. It might involve identifying the situation through observation and those sort of permaculture techniques, exploring the possibilities for resilience, taking action, and then reflecting every few years to make sure the plan is relevant. So to conclude, my research showed that community organisations have extraordinary power to positively coordinate, to contribute to resilience. They also play a strong role in recovering immediately following a disaster. Work now will ensure a smoother transition later. Thank you.